My name is Jay Bernardes. I'm the CISO at Anecdotes AI, a GRC automation platform. I got here, I guess, a fairly standard route, if there's such a thing. I'm an ex-pen tester, physsec, social engineering guy. Spent a number of years working all over the world, the Far East, the Middle East, the US, and all over Europe, where I'm currently based in the north of the UK. I've worked for companies of all different sizes, solving all different security problems, and I guess by virtue of that fact, ended up being a CISO one day in this chair.
Cool. So our first question, what is a cybersecurity myth that you want to debunk once and for all?
Gosh, I could debunk a lot of myths on cybersecurity. Can I have two?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fine. The first one we'll debunk is hiring in cyber. There's this absolute nonsense for years about the fact that we have this massive skills shortage and there's these tens of thousands of unfilled positions. We've actually now probably got the opposite problem. We've probably now got too many people for the positions that we have, especially as we look towards an age of AI and automation and increased tooling capabilities. But the reality is actually this is a complete disconnect from how broad and confusing and diverse a security role currently is to matching it to how hiring process traditionally works. It's almost impossible for me to give what is a traditional rec to an HR manager or to a recruitment company and then to go and fill that position effectively. So most of these tens of thousands of open roles exist simply because we can't write recs very well. And we can't define what we need very well. And the truth is that cybersecurity needs good people, not just lots of open jobs.
Yeah.
I guess that number two is that AI is going to solve all things. I'm a big advocate for using AI in many ways, in many parts of both my personal and professional life. We've implemented AI to change and automate and to accelerate and everything else, right? Bigger, faster, better, stronger. But the truth is it can't replace human intuition. I don't see a way in which it can in the future. If you look at kind of examples of how in the world of do control, you can trigger based on alerting of what an employee looks like from a high risk or specific suspicious kind of behavior. But if I know things because I sat in a corridor or in a room where I overheard a conversation, we'll never get that way into AI. It's always going to be based on algorithms. It's always going to be based on maths. And it's always going to lack that human insight. So I think the next myth I would always debunk in security is that AI won't solve your problems. It'll just help you solve them faster.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think we talk about that a lot, and it's everywhere. You can't open up LinkedIn. You can't open up any conversation without AI creeping in. So I like that you said that one because that's super relevant right now. Our second question is more fun. If a CISO were an animal, what would it be? And kind of why you chose that one.
As you said, you gave me some context to these questions before we started, which I'm happy for anyone to put into the public sphere, but that's the one where I'm just whirling around my head going, gosh, I don't know what you'd answer. The closest I got to, and it's slightly self-ego inflating, is probably around the concept of an octopus, right? Octopuses are super intelligent. I think that these days CISOs are given so many different responsibilities in our roles, whether that's IT or SRE or Eng or traditional security compliance, kind of market elements. You become so diverse, you have to work out how to do everything at once. And I think you need both the multiple arms and the multiple brains. But also, if worse comes to worse, an octopus can hide in the smallest possible space. I think in the modern CISO environment, we'd love a place to hide when breaches happen.
That's an awesome answer, actually. And I think it kind of speaks to CISOs being not so much generalists in everything, but you do need to know a little bit about every single facet that you touch. And I mean, obviously octopuses, I feel like is plural. Obviously they can, I don't know, I feel like if there's prey, they can kind of beat them out no problem. So, and then they can hide too. So for those kinds of times that you kind of want to get away from stuff. All right, awesome. The last question is, where do you see the role of the CISO evolving within the next 5 years? You touched on AI, do you think that that's going to be kind of, an integral part of the role, going forward, or kind of how is that going to change it? Or just, where do you see the position shifting at a macro level, and then kind of in your own experience and how you're kind of, tackling challenges these days, how do you see that changing?
Yeah, I think there's multiple answers to this. I think one is, and I don't think any of my opinions are not controversial on this subject, so I make no apologies, but I think CIOs are dying out. I think a CIO is now irrelevant. You use traditional manager an infrastructure or a data estate or a data center. No one works that way anymore. And in reality, security is the primary focus of a business. So I think the natural move for me from a CISO is to replace that CIO chair where often there's a reporting line and actually become the de facto person for all things security, compliance, IT, etc., everything, right? Own the infrastructure, own the security on top of it. I want to trust the security and the infrastructure to the same person, not different people. So I think that's number one. I think number two, I worry for what the future of CISOs is. If you look at where AI is playing right now, it's replacing entry-level roles, right? We're talking about SOC analysts, we're talking about TPRM, so about risk management, we're talking about entry-level GRC, we're talking about this kind of first tier, but most of us cut our teeth and learn the stuff that makes us relevant and useful now. So I worry what happens for the future of people like me who didn't have those first sets of roles because AI already did it. How do you become distinguished or an expert in anything if you never did the basics of everything? So I think that I worry about. And I think the last one is just, it doesn't change. Like every time a new wave comes, whether it's AI or big data or cloud, or I've been through enough of them now as a security person, I don't think it does change. The concept is still the same. There are risks that exist. We have to find ways to reduce them, mitigate them where possible in the most cost-effective way, and then reposition ourselves, stop being seen as cost centers and be seen as profit centers, be seen as delivering business outcomes, not just saying, I'll save you if a breach happens. But I think that's the same role that CISOs had 10 years ago. I just think we're getting slightly better at doing it, and we're getting slightly more refined at presenting ourselves and getting slightly more articulate about speaking to those points. But I think the role will stay the same in the future. The risk will change, but the person needed in the seat will always be the same.
Yeah. No, I think that second reason that you brought up is super, super interesting because it's kind of like, AI is kind of a cop out when you're saying, oh, like, how is it going to change? Because obviously AI is going to change things, but for those junior roles where you really learn the foundational things that make you successful and you build upon those as you grow in your career, it is kind of scary when you think about the implications of that, because if you're not training somebody to do those things and they're expert at that and then they move up and then that makes them qualified to be a CISO down the line, it's like, well, to your point, well, are you qualified to do all these things? Are you really a generalist and expert in all these little things that will make you expert enough to be a CISO at one day? So I think it's deeper than that too. Like, I'm still an advocate that says that every CISO should be technical. I don't think anyone in our world is non-technical. I think that's a bad description, but there are more technical and less technical people. Yeah. And I worry that I see, because the CISO role is now more focused on being a business enabler and being able to speak to strategy and delivering business outcomes and ROI and more complex business terminology, you see the rise of more and more ex-auditors, ex-consultants becoming those roles who lack the technical competencies to really speak to engineering teams, to speak to SREs, to speak to real core infrastructure teams. Yeah. I worry that I think that's a trend which will get worse, because especially if you look at people like myself who learned their technology background through pen testing and through like technical or at least disciplines that require a technical aptitude, if those are going away because of AI and we're focusing more and more on these kind of soft skills as being the core or key set of CISO attributes you want, then you actually end up reducing your funnel to like a point of almost like one kind of single personality type. And I worry that if there's a lack of diversity at the CISO level, you end up actually not really being able to meet the demands of different companies who have different needs from their security leadership. But that's the rule, right? That if you look at like, what do you want in a security leader? You want someone who isn't scared of change, right? The historical mold of a CISO who says no and who is like scared of what holds in the future. The reality is you need a CISO who says, yes, I'm going to work it out, right? Yeah. AI was like, the good CISOs I know didn't try and box off AI. They just let it flow and went, let's work out what the hell's going on and try and work out how we fix it while it's live. Like, and that's the reality, is if you're not willing to change and adapt and address problems as they come on the fly, like people will do it anyway. Like people naturally will subvert you. They will just go and do it in shadow form. So you have to be like willing to embrace change, disruption, like the whole kind of the rhetoric I've grown up with in the kind of startup world of like fail fast and often. Like you have to be willing to be that, or else I don't think the future security practitioners or leaders can come from the historical molds. Like you have to be more willing to change and fail right now than you were able to be 10 years ago, even in like the banks and the listed businesses. So would you say, for someone coming in to the security field or someone pivoting into the security field, is that something like a piece of advice you would give, like be open to that change and adaptation? Like you have to lean into it. You can't, shy away from it, even if it is unfamiliar.
Yeah, I think like I said, it's what's needed in our industry right now is people who aren't scared to fail and aren't scared to try new things. If that means diving in and working out how to deal with Terraform scripting to deploy CSPMs, which you've never done before, right? work it out. Like if that means going to a board meeting and like dealing with the fact that they don't want to know about ROI or potential cost of a breach, they want to know about how, if nothing goes wrong, you're actually helping them deliver business outcomes. So sunglasses brand, how are you helping them sell more sunglasses, right? You have to be able to speak to that. Go work it out. Like if a breaches are going to happen, customers are going to say things, pen testing will find stuff, vulnerability scans will flag stuff. You have to be willing to deal with things as and when they happen, and not just be someone who advocates for the fact that we're going to stop everything going wrong, because it just doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I think we got a lot of good content, and I loved your answers. I think, my favorite answer was your animal answer, honestly. I wasn't expecting you to say that, because I don't know what I would answer either. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
No worries.